everybody, and welcome to a Tatter-a-fact here at the Girlz Ink studio in Las Vegas. And we are here with another Zoom podcast. And today we have Michelle Heffner with us. Yay.
Hi.
Yes. As in Hugh Hefner, but with two F's.
All right, we're a little bit extra.
A little bit. I like that. I like that. It's good to be extra.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you are out of Maryland.
That's right. Yeah, I'm about halfway between Baltimore and DC. So we have a ton of diversity in our area, all age ranges, all skin tones. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I was just watching something about Las Vegas from like our town council. You know, sometimes I flip channels and I stop on those really boring channels every now and then. And they were saying Las Vegas is the second most diverse city in the United States right now. Did you know that? I didn't know that either. Yeah. So I was like, you know, but it makes sense. When I'm out and about in Vegas, I mean, you see, like you said, all, you know, ethnic backgrounds, all, you know, gays, transgender, straight, I mean, conservative, you just see everything here. So I think we're like a big, huge melting pot of diversity and inclusivity, which is great. It's the kind of city I want to live in. So I love it. Is it cold? Is it cold back there right now?
It just started hitting like the 30s and the 40s out here, Fahrenheit for those of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just started hitting that.
Yeah, and snow. Well, you know, for Vegas, it's been chilly, but this week's been pretty good, I think. I think we're hitting like 70 for Thanksgiving, right around there. So not bad. But a lot of people don't get that Vegas. We can get really super cold days, like in the winter, but we don't typically get snow. You know,
the last time I was there for America the Beautiful, it was raining and kind of chilly, actually.
Yeah, we do have those days. We do have but we love those days because, you know, we have about 350 days of sun a year. So, you know, when it rains, it's almost, you know, people are afraid to drive. They turn on their fireplaces. Like, oh, I got to hunker down. It's raining, you know. But it's good. It's good. So, hey, I just want to tell our viewers, this is our very first podcast for 2023. I know. Yeah. So kind of fun. It's not only our very first podcast, it is the very first podcast of season 3. So we're kicking off season 3. Yeah. And I was just telling you earlier before we went live, is I didn't really think too far ahead starting this whole Tatter-a-fact thing. I just thought it'd be like something fun. But yeah, we're all really enjoying it. And we get a lot of messages and DMs on how people are just really, really digging it. They're getting lots of information and education. And we have some people say it's their morning news now. They get up and they, you know, listen to 15 minutes with their coffee before they have to go get ready for work. So we're just getting all kinds of messages from artists all over the world that are digging Tatter-a-fact. So
yeah, I'm one of them. That's why I reached out, because I love you guys so much.
Yeah, and so you hit me up in an email. And I was like, hey, Teryn, you think you want to like talk about color theory on Tatter-a-fact, do a podcast? And I'm like, hell yeah. I love talking color theory with other artists. And you and I have never really had conversations about color theory. So not really. So it will be really interesting. I think conversations like that, like we don't really rehearse, you know, these conversations. They're not scripted or anything like that. I do get a little outline, like a little bullet point. So I don't ramble or I don't miss any, you know, because I can ramble. Or I don't miss any, you know, good points, like good juicy points. But other than that, it's not scripted. You never know how the conversation is going to go or what my guest is going to say. So I'm excited about this conversation. So
good.
Yeah. So Michelle, so how long have you been in PMU?
It is a little bit over 4 years. It's going to be 5 years in March 2023.
Okay. So you're just getting out of kind of that newbie kind of stage and into, starting to be a
Yes.
little
Yes.
seasoned. Things are starting
Feeling the
to
groove.
feeling the groove, settling in, getting comfortable and confident. And that's about the year that it happens for most artists, about that 5-year mark. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
congratulations. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate that.
you're welcome. So why color theory? Why did you want to talk about color theory? Does that happen to be one of your passions or your topics of interest?
Great question. I was noticing in the Facebook forums, just all the different Facebook forums for professional permanent makeup artists, that so many people were asking questions about it, and they were getting a million answers and getting very confused. And some of it was like, oh, I've heard that before, but I don't think it's true from my experience. Or I don't know where you learned that, but I know that it's definitely not true. And it was like, why are you overcomplicating things? There's only so many colors for eyebrows. Why are you overdoing it?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's it. And I think color theory can be a layered, complicated subject and knowledge to absorb for the newbie. Right. But it doesn't have to be. And
Exactly.
yes, and that's why I got super deep and passionate about color theory all those years ago when I first started.
Yes, the webinar.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to do that webinar, because when I first started, I took several color theory courses, and one of the color theory courses, I remember the teacher actually getting out these swatches, these fabrics, and holding it up, and if you're a fall, you're cool.
Winter.
Yeah, or winter, and I just remember getting like all these different opinions and theories and and it confused me. And then I took a color theory course from a pretty straight shooter who kind of uncomplicated it a little bit for me. And then as I, went on in my career, things just started making a lot of sense to me. And that's why I built my color theory course, was to uncomplicate the complicated, because it's really not that complicated. But with that said, you have to learn it. There's things to learn, things to know, things we need to be able to identify, right? And yeah, and sometimes I feel, Michelle, that people in PMU, not everybody, but a lot of people I see, like, they don't want to take this time to study and learn. They just want to go to the Facebook and get a quick answer, and like they
make that dollar.
Yeah. They don't want to take the time to study, to read, to apply, to learn. But that is required in order to be a knowledgeable artist who can, with pretty high accuracy, predict your healed results. Because I believe when we learn color theory and you learn your pigments, you can predict your healed results with pretty high accuracy. And who the hell doesn't want to do that? Right? I mean, no more walking into the lobby, praying like, oh, please, 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 please let it be the color I want it to be, or please don't let it be gray and ashy. We don't have to, succumb to, a wing and a prayer kind of results. We can, nail those results once you learn color theory. So
I know. And that's once you finally get to that stage, you're like, yes, I am a PMU goddess.
Yeah, exactly. But I love color theory. I think it's just a really super fun topic for me. Love talking about it. So, so why don't you go? So you mentioned, like, you had brow clients, like lots of diversity, skin tone, age range, lots of sun damage clients, mature clients. What skin type do you find like the most challenging, that can really mess with our healed results? Make any beautiful pigment in a bottle heal kind of shitty if we don't know how to prevent that.
Yeah, I definitely find that it is one of two that's going to do it to me. It's going to be someone either who has incredibly dry, paper thin, like Fitzpatrick 1 or 2, like very mature skin. I find that can be a little bit like, oh, I'm going to be very careful. And and I learned a lesson each time I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that is really, really hard for me is ruddy and oily and thick pores
Yeah.
and just uneven texture.
Yeah.
So it's the two of those that I have the hardest time. And that's when I lean on my color theory.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's pretty much, plug and play my colors. I have a set palette and I don't deviate from it really.
Yeah. No, that's really smart. Ruddy is, I agree with you, the most challenging skin type. It puts a lot of stress and challenges our pigments, our decisions. We have to, think, really think when we're working on ruddy skin. And there's different levels of ruddy skin, from level 1, level 2 to level 3. Level 3 being, oh my gosh, so red and ruddy. And, and I find ruddy skin to be textured, larger pores, oily, real red. And a lot of people, Michelle, early on when they're newbies, they'll look at ruddy skin or pink skin, because there's pink skin, like you're Scottish, you're Irish, right? You're not quite ruddy. You might develop into a ruddy as you go through the years, but you're not really classified as ruddy yet. But you almost treat the pink, the pink skin like a ruddy. They're just not, and they're challenging. And both skin types, newbies often will look at pink skin, ruddy skin, and they'll think they're warm. That's warm skin.
Yep.
Right?
I know. I love how the prevailing sort of it's almost like a mythos that gets passed down around is when you see red, add green. And I'm like, when you do that, you get gray. Right. That's what's going to happen, guys.
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way on my own face, because I used a green-based brown 4 years ago, and it went super gray. And I was like, oh, learn that lesson.
Yeah, exactly. You got to add, if possible, use a neutral or warm-based pigment, and then you have to, a lot of times you have to manually add additional warmth to prevent the grays, because pink skin, ruddy skin definitely can cause your pigment to heal gray. I mean, super gray, really an unattractive shade of gray. And I find the most challenging ruddies are like the dark hair ruddies that want dark pigment, because dark pigment is cool, right? There's no such thing as a warm, dark pigment. So sometimes you have to work with a dark pigment that's cool, and you have to implant that on a canvas, on a lady that's super ruddy and super cool and going to ash out pigment no matter what. So sometimes you have that, and that can be like super challenging as well.
What's your go-to on that, Teryn? Because I have my, what I tend to do, but what is a powder brow? So a powder brow that you're doing on someone who's got that ruddy, they're like Snow White, that one, high contrast.
Yeah.
What's your go-to color for that one?
And it depends the level of ruddiness, because I break it down to level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 being the most cool, and we're going to get the most gray in that healed result. So it depends on the level of coolness. If they're super ruddy, like level 3, oftentimes, Michelle, I won't, even though I know they want a dark color, that first session, I'm not going to go in with a dark color. I'm going to go in with maybe like a medium or a color in between medium and dark. And I'm going to add some yellow orange and get that to heal rich and pretty first. And then at the touch up, once I see that healed rich and pretty, now I can layer on top my really dark color. And of course I put some orange or some gray yellow orange into that dark color as well. So sometimes I do it in steps if I'm nervous, because sometimes it's not always good to take a dark color that's dark and cool, and that first session, put it right on skin. Sometimes it's better first to build a foundation of, rich color, and then layer on top that dark skin. So I do that quite often, and I find that to be super successful for me. That's a formula that's worked for me for many, many years.
Yes, I can see that. When I also wanted to talk about, in those kinds of instances, whether you reach for like an organic or an inorganic, or it doesn't matter to you. Because I have my feelings on that.
Yeah,
I was wondering about you.
Yeah, I reach for an inorganic. Yeah, an iron oxide. Because the organics have more of a if not all I see these statements all the time, like organics age to gray and blue, iron oxides age to red and orange. Not all the time, do you know? Not all the time. That's not, I don't like those blanket statements. But if an organic is going to shift color over time, it's going to shift to those grays. So the way my mind works, if I've got a canvas, a skin type that's going to heal and shift color to gray over time, because that's what that particular skin's going to do, why would I put an organic on there that has the propensity to shift or age to a gray? So, right, it's almost like a double whammy, right? It's like I'm not even giving that brow a chance to stay out of the gray zone. So I will, on those skin types, I do like the iron oxides, because if an iron oxide is going to shift over time, they are going to shift typically to the warmer tones. But, and so that's just the way my mind works. I'm super analytical, and I just think all these things out. I would rather have a pigment that's going to shift to a warmer tone on a skin that has a propensity to shift to gray. Do you see what I mean? It makes more sense to me. Yeah.
I agree with that. And I think that where my mind goes is when I'm thinking about brow colors and how they're mixed and the color components, it's almost always yellow, red, and black to make a brow color for almost all of them. And the organics like Perma Blend or like the loaded lines, even though they don't fade gray, they have a tendency to hold on to the black part of the brown longer than the yellow and the red. And on some clients, that's okay. Like when I need a cooler color, that's okay.
Right.
But for almost all of those ruddy clients, if the black is the thing that stays the longest for them, they're gonna look gray or blue.
They're gonna look gray or blue. Yeah. And I know the whole industry right now is just high on organics, right? I mean, they're just tripping and loving organics. And we have an LI, we came out with an organic line, but LI's been making organics, for the last 25 years. We also do the iron oxides. So I think I would love to see artists in the industry not just get locked into, one or the other, because as we're talking about right now, there are cases and situations where an organic is going to be a better choice for that particular client, that particular skin type, that particular case. And on the flip side, there are going to be situations where an iron oxide is absolutely the more ideal choice for that particular skin type, that particular situation. So it's being a smart artist, a thinking artist, and not just reaching, for a brand or a particular, type of pigment. It's being a thinking artist and having both types, an iron oxide, some iron oxides, some organics, and knowing when to use one or the other, right? So, yeah,
I agree.
I think if artists could get there, they would see less grays, they would see less of the flawed colors, as we call them, and see more true results and better aging.
Absolutely.
If they incorporated both into their toolbox.
Exactly. Yeah. I love my toolbox. I love reaching in and saying, okay, I look back, I write down all my color recipes. I don't know about you, but every time for each client, I write down what I used for each appointment and each touch up so I can keep track of it. And I've referred back to those notes so many times to learn different things and then to grow better as an artist.
Yeah.
So I'm sure most people do. But I just learned that tattoo artists don't do that. And I was like, well, that kind of makes sense that you're using like 20 billion colors at a time.
No, tattooers don't do that. And like I'm teaching Michelle, my artist here, areolas. She just did her first areola the other day. And when I do areolas, it's like I'm tattooing a body tattoo. I'll have 6 or 7, 8 large pigment caps out with lots of different colors, some diluted, some not diluted, because it's almost like doing a tattoo. You're trying to make the nipple look 3D, so you got to do light and dark shading. You got to put texture. And I told Michelle, I'm like, it's areolas. What's gonna kind of mess with you a little bit is I don't write down like my color combinations because you can't. You're just
because it's a little here, a little there, a double dip here.
That's exactly right. It's not straightforward like an eyebrow or an eyeliner or a lip. It's like you're dipping here or dipping there, and it's like, oh, I need a little of this. And so it's really hard to write color notes on an areola. But the longer you do areolas, you just develop this sense. Like, I did body tattooing for many years, and you're absolutely right. We do not write down what color green or brand of green. We don't write that stuff down at all. But it is good to write that stuff down when we're working on our eyebrows and our eyeliner or lips. And I'm sure some people do areolas in a manner where they're not using all these colors and dilution percentages, where it's a little bit more straightforward and they can write, pretty good color notes. But I certainly cannot.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, with brows, if I could talk a little bit about how I used to use organics and then switched over to using mostly inorganics.
Yes.
And why I decided to do that.
Yeah. So you started out on organics. Okay.
Yep. As a newbie, I started with them.
Okay. And then you moved into iron oxides. And I was the opposite. I started out on iron oxides. And a few years ago when we were developing Loaded, I got really into organics for the eyebrows, and I was using, all organic. But in the last couple of years, I've walked it back, and I'm predominantly back to iron oxide again. Yeah, I still do use Loaded and an organic in certain situations, but I'm probably 70% iron oxide. Yeah.
Same here.
So tell me your story. What happened? Or Absolutely. Why did you make that change? I guess I should say.
So when I first learned how to do powder brows, my first teacher was Ruben, and he had taught us how to use permablend with a single needle. And permablend was like just coming up out of world famous, and it was still kind of new, and people were super excited about seeing the healed results. But that was the only thing that I knew how to use. Besides, I used fee brows for microblading, but I'd only ever been able to use the permablend style for powder brows. And I used permablend for probably almost like 3.5 years, close to 4 years. And I watched it progress over time on many, many different skin tones. And it would be amazing and hold really true for like 3 or 4 years on like a Fitzpatrick, like 345, who wanted a really bold brow and was comfortable with the cool tone. But on a lot of my clients who had that sun damaged skin, who had that ruddy undertone, I was noticing when they would come back that it would almost have like a weird bluish greenish undertone. And it didn't look like just a faded brow. It looked like it was the same darkness. It was just grayish.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not what I know. And I was not like heavy handed, like cramming it in. I was doing, the single needles and sort of brushing it through. But it was becoming a problem because I was like, I can't have that out there. That's not appropriate. I don't want my clients to be like, yeah, I didn't come back to you because they turned green,
Right.
So I started seeing that. And then I was paying more attention to the Girlz Ink, the Facebook group, and you have a lot of albums of like 4, 5, 6, 7 years healed eyebrows with the LI, like the aqua colors.
Yeah.
And I was incredibly impressed because it was so much more true to tone than anything that I was seeing coming back. And And then I also got frustrated. Now I did my own brows with Permablend, and it was a color I thought looked gorgeous for about a year. And then about a year and a half, 2 years later, I was like, oh, that's kind of gray in certain light.
Yeah.
So,
and the difference there might be because in the LI Aqua line, that's an iron oxide line, we're not using carbon blacks. You know, so the black is fading out of the skin. And, you know, and loaded is organic, and we have carbon blacks in loaded as well. So, you know, one thing I want to, you know, put out there to our listeners that it's not necessarily a permablend issue. It's it's something that this is what can happen with organic pigments on certain skin types. Skin types. We talked about it already with the ruddiness. That's why, you know, I'm a big, you know, I love loaded. I was knee deep in formulating that. And of course, you know, you put carbon in there because everybody wanted an all organic line from LA. But on Ruddies, I will not use loaded because, you know, it is organic and we do have the black carbons in there. And sun damaged skin. That is the other skin type that can be super challenging and ash everything out, turn everything gray. You know, it's just one of those skin types that has a propensity to heal gray, turn any beautiful pigment gray, super challenging. So again, why would you use an organic line, whether it's Permablend or loaded or febrile or any organic line that has, you know, black carbon in it, that is not going to be the most ideal choice with a skin type that tends to ash out, right? On those skin types, I want my pigments to slowly fade out or to age a little on the warmer side, right? So yeah, it's just, again, we come back to this thing. It's just artists knowing the difference, the science behind organics and iron oxides and how each one performs and ages on all the different skin types. Because by no means is iron oxides the perfect type of pigment or it's just not. And organics are not. But in each situation, one or the other can be the perfect choice. And then in another case, it can be not a great choice.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, there was a learning curve, I'll say, with using inorganics and using colors that I wasn't used to. I was really expecting all of the LI to heal warmer. And I was blown away when I used dark toffee, which is like a, you know, like a medium dark color. Yeah. And it was cool. And I was like, oops, learned that one.
Well, you know why, now Michelle? LI got a bad rap, okay? Because
I know.
Years ago, when microblading first hit the scene, the microblading technique tends to ash out pigments, you know, just because of the way it implants pigment so concentrated, right, in this straight line. So, and you had all these trainers that had only been microblading for a year. Now they're trainers, and they were teaching, you know, all their students. I mean, when you use LI, slam a bunch of ungray, slam a bunch of orange. And so the orange was being abused, overused, and lots of orange eyebrows, and they blamed LI. And I'm like, this is so not fair. I mean, LI has 25 years of history with nothing aging red or orange, and then all of a sudden all these microbladers hit the scene, and all you're seeing is orange brows a year later after they do them. And I'm like, it was horrible to go through that and try to correct that and re-educate people. And so nowadays people absolutely realize and understand LI, iron oxides, you know, they don't turn red and orange and all that stuff most of the time. I would say 80-90% of the time, but there's always going to be those skin types that turn any color, you know, a little bit gray or a little bit warmer as it ages, because, you know, it's just one of those damn skin types that, you know, that annoy us and frustrate us.
Absolutely.
So you said something that I want to hit on. You said it was a learning curve going from organics to iron oxides. And I see that on the Girlz Ink board all the time. On the Girlz Ink board, we got about 10,000 people. I welcome everybody. I don't care what pigment line you use. We just want to mentor and whatnot. But we don't allow like the promoting of other lines because it, kind of technically an LI board, but lots of people are on there. But I see that a lot. I was using organics or I was using, Fibrow or Permablend. I switched to LI and I'm struggling. I'm struggling to get to, and what is it? What was the learning curve for you? And I don't understand the learning curve because I've been using both for so many years. So what is the struggle and the big difference and the big learning curve that artists are experiencing when they go from an organic, like Permablend, to aqua iron oxide?
So I can answer that. So we had been told in the various groups that a iron oxide would need to be implanted more saturated than a organic, like Permablend or like loaded. So we were told that you have to oversaturate like the LI aqua colors to get the same kind of healed tone so that they were supposed to look a lot darker when they left versus what you would be used to seeing if you were doing them with like LI loaded or a Permablend or something like that in the organics. And so I was oversaturating a lot of my clients, and then they would come back very, very, very saturated because LI is very saturated. Like the colors are very true when they heal. I was also told that you didn't have to like worry about adding any warmth to it, and I was like, in some cases that is very, very true. I can use a lot of the colors straight up and it heals very true. But like in those ruddy clients, those sun damaged clients, it's not so much using the exact perfect color. The first time it's using like a warmer color off the bat for me.
Right.
So it was a little bit of color and it was a little bit of how saturated I was doing it, that I was learning how to reuse my pigments.
Right. Yeah, no. And I've heard that too. I've had people screenshot things that are being said on other boards and they'll send them to me and like, is this true? And I'm like, no, it's so not true. And it's so frustrating because there's a lot of crap and myths and untruths being told about iron oxides. And a lot of these myths are being told by, people that, for somehow, some way make a living off organics. I mean, sometimes it goes back to that. Or it's
like
just,
they don't want to trying to save face in front of their would-be students kind of thing.
Exactly. But, LI Pigments, the iron oxide line, Aqua. So I would say about 7 years ago, there you go. Yeah.
My baby.
Yeah, and this is a line that's been out 31 years.
31
years.
Amazing.
Yes. And so over those 31 years, I mean, it is not the same line it was today, 31 years ago, of course. It's not the same line today that it was 6 years ago. 6 years ago, when everybody started working, light-handed, tattooing shallow, using single needle, hardly saturating, going shallow in the skin, this whole trend that is still very trendy today.
Very popular, yep.
Aqua wasn't performing as well because it just wasn't. And all of a sudden, we got over the whole warm thing, fixed that, and then we see Aqua's just not healing as well. So we upped the pigment load. So it is super duper highly pigmented. It is as strong as any organic on the market, including loaded. Yeah. It's just an organic. I mean, an iron oxide. So the difference is Aqua's iron oxide is just as strong as loaded. It's just as strong as Permablend or any organic on the line. We made darn sure of that. But the difference is it heals more muted. Yes. It's not as vivid or bold in tone, but it saturates just as easily and just as quickly and just as much. So,
Exactly. And so that was also part of my learning curve. Since I was oversaturating it, I learned to pull back a little bit from that full, like it almost looked like a sticker kind of look. I was like, oh, that was too much. And I sort of like pulled back. I started using single needles with my LI aqua, and I was like, oh, I'm having very similar healed results to my perma blend and my, my other organic kind of situations. And I was like, oh, I really like the way this looks, and I feel confident that I'm not going to have these people come back to me in 3 years with this mess kind of situation.
Yeah.
So I did learn how to use the inorganics with a single needle, and how to do that kind of like, the Russian style brow with the single needle, and it's like real diffuse and things like that.
Yeah. It's a beautiful
So
style. Well, I heard on a board a few weeks ago that you can't create pixels with an iron oxide. And I'm like,
okay.
where? I know, that's what I'm like. I'm like, okay, I need a fucking drink. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I'm like,
A tattoo is a tattoo.
I know,
It's
like, where do people get, what do you mean? And this girl, she owns one of the boards, and she has a few thousand people on there. And I'm like, what do you mean? I wanted to like private message her so bad, but I just rant in the office, and I get all frustrated in the office. I'm like, it's just like so not true. I mean, there's and right here in my own studio, like Michelle and I started, we use single needle. We get the most beautiful pixels, and a few people did go on there and post pictures, and we're like, that's not true. This was LI's classic brown and beautiful pixels, and she even posted a healed result. Yeah, so I just think. I think there's just been a lot of misinformation. And I think a lot of this misinformation comes when some of these new organic, because fact is, before like these organics hit the scene a few years ago, the industry was primarily iron oxide, right? Organics weren't popular. And then organics hit the scene, and they became very, very popular. But that's when a lot of the myths and the untruths started, getting put out there, that iron oxide's this, iron oxide's that, and blah, 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 blah. And some of those untruths, I mean, they're still here today. We're still battling them. They're still circulating in some of these groups. But like yourself, I come across artists, I mean, multiple weekly that are emailing us, DM us, and they're discovering what you're discovering is, yes, I still love organics on certain skin types and certain situations. I'm going to use them here and there, but wow, what a whole new world with iron oxides, and everything I heard about them are not true.
Yes. And once that opened up, I was like, oh, finally, for my clients, I can finally give them the thing that I've been like hoping and praying in my mind was real for them, that it was just going to fade to a softer, lighter version of itself.
Yeah.
That it's not going to turn purple or a weird color on them. And now I can say, like, I know what these colors look like long term, because we have a lot of results, a lot of healed result photos and proof, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I love. And we just don't see that with all of the newer like organic lines that, like the new colors that get added on. And I'm just like, I just don't see I just need to see long-term healed results. And I can see it with the LI Aqua and the other lines that have a lot of photos of healed work.
Yeah.
So I love having versatility.
Yeah, I think that's key. Anybody that knows me or follows me, that's like my mantra. It's like versatility and efficiency. Those are the two things that really would describe me, as an artist. Is, I'm super versatile. I use both organics, iron oxides. I have such a deep appreciation for both, and efficiency. Being super efficient in your work, and choosing, the right pigment, the right needle, the right everything for that particular client. And the formula for one client is not going to be the ideal formula for the client, the very next client. You know what I mean? Sometimes we have to, change things up from client to client to client. And And that's not being taught and talked about enough in our industry. Everybody's like just grabbing a single needle and grabbing, a particular, bottle or color or brand, and, and just, and that's all they use, same technique, same needle, same, for type of pigment, for every single client. And boy, they're really missing out.
Yeah, I understand.
I think.
I agree with that.
I think.
But I would love to say that switching over or transitioning to learning how to use a new line, having a limited palette helped me learn the different nuances of each of the colors that I was using. And then I could do a tiny tweak here or there on the same type of skin tone or the same, skin type, and learn from that as well. So can I show you my limited palette that I tend to reach for even now that I'm used to using the colors?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I found that you definitely need something in the light, medium, and deeper tones of any brow colors that you're using.
Right.
So I tend to reach for in Li Aqua, which is the inorganics. I tend to reach for taupe as my lightest color. I like classic brown as my medium color.
I just used classic brown today, but I added a little beautiful blonde to it because she was older, and I thought she might ash classic brown out a skosh, so I added a little beautiful blonde.
Oh, beautiful blonde.
Oh, that's my favorite combo. Like I could probably do just about everybody with some combination of classic brown and beautiful blonde, right?
I can see that.
Unless they're gray haired, then I'm going to reach for taupe.
Yeah, exactly. And then I really like, for my darkest color, I like dark toffee. That's the one that I always reach for.
Yeah. I'm a dark toffee girl, or ebony brown when I have to get really dark. I've never been a Navajo user. Like Navajo.
Yeah, I don't know why either.
It's super popular. It's one of our most top selling colors. You see artists all over the boards loving Navajo. And I've used it here and there, but it's not one of my core colors. Dark toffee and ebony brown is. But I agree with you, Michelle. It's like, as artists, we don't need 20 brow colors. Do you know?
It's a light, a medium, or a dark brown.
And then you mix.
Which one you want.
Yeah. And I think you do need something for, a redhead.
Oh, yeah. A hazelnut.
Yeah. And something for your gray haired, white haired ladies, like a taupe. And, and those are kind of like your bookend, for redheads and taupes. And then in the middle, you're right, like, a light for blonde, a medium dark, and then a dark. So my core colors, I have about 7 colors, and I put them together in a kit on the store. But I agree, the smaller our palette, you learn those colors individually, what each one does straight out of the bottle on all the different skin types. And then you learn, these little custom mixes, Yeah.
Yep. A drop here, a drop there.
Oh, yeah. Like if I don't need to go quite to classic brown, I'll take hazelnut and I'll add some classic brown to, deepen it up a little bit. But, and I love mixing, but, unfortunately, I think today you see with a lot of the young artists, they don't want anything too complicated. They don't want to mix. They don't want to learn color theory, not all, of course, but a lot. They just want things super easy, ready-made. And unfortunately, they picked a profession. It just doesn't work like that.
Right. Right. That's like people who want to be permanent makeup artists, but don't can't handle causing pain. Like, you're going to cause some pain.
Yeah, right.
You're getting used to that.
Right. You're going to cause some pain, or if you don't like blood, it's like you picked the wrong profession. You're going to see some blood. But maybe that's how this whole I didn't cause blood, trend started, because that's another whole trend that you're seeing on Instagram. Like, I don't get blood. It shouldn't bleed. It shouldn't bruise. I'm like, that's just a bunch of.
Go to the dermis or the epidermis.
I know. Well,
who told you that?
I don't know where that trend came from, only to tattoo in the epidermis, but pigment performs pretty shitty in the epidermis. It's not meant to be in the epidermis.
You know what? I know exactly where that came from, because it was something that it came about in my cycle of learning about particularly eyeliner, it was the tattooing on the balloon thing. Have you ever
Ah,
seen that? Have you seen that, or tattooing on
yeah,
a latex
yeah,
ball?
on
And
the
I'm like, what?
balloon, I've seen that.
Like, no.
Yeah.
First of all, I have massive anxiety about balloons popping, so I could never do it. I tried it one time and I almost had a panic attack.
That's
And I was like,
funny.
ah, never again. But when I was trying to do that kind of like super light, it would just not go into the skin, especially for, I know we're talking about brows, but for eyeliner, I was like barely touching the surface and like none of the color would go in. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get this?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I know it had to do with something with that, like barely brush the surface of the skin. And I'm like, that's not how tattoos work.
No,
That's not how
that's not
permanent.
how it's not how permanent makeup works. It's not how tattoo works. And and I think permanent makeup also is getting it's almost feels like to me it's being absorbed into the beauty industry. Like almost as a
Yes.
beauty treatment rather than a tattoo procedure. And
Mhm.
which is fine. I mean, I don't really, that doesn't I don't really have I'm not going to argue about that. That's fine, but with that said, the techniques being taught, it doesn't allow pigment to perform at its best. You don't get those
Mhm.
true rich tones. It falls
Mhm.
out quicker.
Mhm.
You're having to touch up more often, which is causing skin damage, skin trauma.
Mhm.
So you're much better off implanting into that epidermal area. That's the sweet spot. That's where pigment performs at its very best. And
Mhm.
that's what clients want from their PMU artists. If you sat down a
Right.
client and said, hey, do you want to go over here and have it in the epidermis? It won't bleed. And, be in the epidermis.
Look gorgeous in the after
You'll look
photos.
gorgeous in the after photo. It won't be that red. You won't have swelling. It won't bleed. And you can walk out the door. It won't be that dark. You don't have to deal with all that bullshit. But in 6 months to a year, it's going to fall out, Or do you want to come over here and, okay, you might get a little bleeding, might be a little puffy and a little red and irritated. The brow's going to look too dark and too solid. In a week, it's going to look beautiful, but you're going to get 3 to 4 beautiful years out of that brow before you have to come back and see me again. What do you think the client's going to pick?
Oh yeah, every time. We know
Every
which one they go
time.
for.
Of course,
We
that's
know
what
which
they're going to
one.
pick, right? Of course. But so
Exactly.
hopefully, but I think what happened, Michelle, a lot of trends like hit the industry at first, and it did get a lot of beauty people like lash girls, estheticians. We've always had a lot of estheticians pick up permanent makeup, but
Yeah.
now we're getting like a lot of beauty people.
Yeah.
And so just a lot of the PMU industry is inundated right now, and I just think that in a lot of trends at once.
Mhm.
But I think things will settle down, and and even if you are a beauty girl, a lot of the beauty girls are, with their procedures, they're going to get frustrated because their clients are going to start complaining, and
Mhm.
once your clients start complaining about your work,
Mhm.
then that makes you like, okay, what's going on with my work? I mean, should it be
Yeah.
lasting longer? Maybe I should be implanting a little bit deeper, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a learning curve, and as long as they're willing to take the time to ask the questions and go back, hopefully to their mentor. Hopefully their mentor has not just left after they ran out of being able to train because they
Yeah,
they just don't know how to market to anyone else.
right.
But hopefully they're able to go back and ask questions and can trust the answers they get and can keep trying.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Because I see a lot of talent. I see
mhm,
a lot of talent, like design wise, and I mean, the brow looks beautiful, but when you blow it up, you can see there's no saturation. You can see
mhm,
it's absolutely tattooed shallow, and it's all going to fall out. And those kind of things show up on the Girlz Ink board, quite often. I don't know what happened. All the pigment fell out.
mhm.
And of course, when all the pigment falls out, it looks like it's a orange or pink eyebrow because of all the scar
Yeah, from
tissue.
the
So
scarring. Yeah,
yeah, so some of them think, well, the pigment turned pink or orange. You're like, no, there's no pigment there.
yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly.
just that's wounded skin, all scar
Exactly.
tissue. But I think the ones that end up loving PMU and obsessed with it, obsessed with their work, like they feel it in their bones, this is what they want to do. They're the ones that really end up like figuring it out, right?
Exactly.
And
Yep,
I
exactly.
had things to figure out. I mean, I had the opposite effect. I was implanting too deep, and I was just
Oh,
I was saturating too much, and
mm-hmm,
I was a little heavy-handed. So I had the
mm-hmm,
opposite issue, and
mm-hmm.
my brows were coming back, and I'd be like, "Holy, oh God!"
Was
Yeah,
100% healed.
yeah, those are 100% healed, and yeah, maybe you might want to put a little foundation over those suckers. Because they
Yep.
were there. Yeah. And
Yeah, I get that.
it was god awful for me in the beginning. But then I got into a body tattoo apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm,
And I learned whip shading, and I learned bigger needles, and I learned, more advanced techniques, and
mm-hmm.
that issue ended up being solved for me. So, but we all start with issues, I think. Most
Exactly.
of us. There might be a lucky small percentage that don't have major issues when they first start out, but they're the lucky rare. But I think most of us start out, our work's not great. It's either all
Mhm,
falling out, we're tattooing too shallow, or we're tattooing too deep, or
mhm.
it's too sad. We all have things to figure out and maneuver around. So, yeah,
Exactly.
you can't get upset over it. Just gotta keep at it, man. But I do think that all the misinformation it makes it more challenging, I think, for the young artist to figure it out
Yeah,
and
yeah.
find their way.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially because so many permanent makeup artists take the course and then go out and open their own little studio. I was one of them.
Yeah,
They don't have someone that they work with. A lot of them don't have apprenticeships. A lot of them are solo, flying solo and figuring it out on their own.
yeah,
So I think we see that a ton, a ton. And the more training, the more like accessible training becomes, the more we're going to see people, reaching out to learn it because they want to be good at it, but there just
yeah,
isn't enough time to go over that in a 2 or 3 day course, which not knocking that. That's what most of my training was in the beginning too, was a two
yeah,
or 3 day course.
yeah,
So
yeah. But it's
not
up
really.
to the individual to go seek more training and
Yeah.
to seek like if you did a training with an artist that does single needle and the whip shading technique, then I would
Mhm.
encourage that artist, your next training, go sit with a trainer for 2 or 3 days that uses bigger shader needles and does circular movements and has different techniques. Learn the different movements, the different needles, the different techniques.
Mhm.
Follow the trainer. Look at their work. How do they
Yeah.
answer on the Facebook boards and Instagram? Are they engaging, with other artists? And really
Mhm.
vet your trainer. Vet
Yeah.
your trainer because I do small 3 people groups, but I'm not a big. I don't market them all over the place. Some trainers, their marketing is. I mean, they must be spending oodles of dollars on their marketing because
Mhm.
they show up in all your feeds and whatnot. But just because someone has great marketing, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a great trainer.
Mhm.
So do some research and ask around and find trainers that are doing different styles, using different needles, different types of pigments,
Right.
and learn it
And
all.
I would say that the one thing that I learned about figuring out, when we say do research, we usually mean, what does their work look like, but what does their healed work look like?
Yeah,
And do they work on multiple types of people, or do they only work on that perfect porcelain model type of skin? Like, what are they showing? Do they have any versatility?
yeah,
That's what I look for when I'm vetting
yeah,
somebody.
and that's an important point because a lot, we call them what, the Instagram brows, right?
Yeah,
And
of
they
course. They're
all look,
gorgeous.
they're gorgeous, and they all look like they're 25 years old with perfect skin, and immediately after, the brow doesn't look red, swollen. It looks like it's already healed, but it's
Hmm.
fresh,
Hmm.
and that's just not reality. It's
Yeah.
filters. It's a lot of these Instagram brows. They're actually putting makeup on the red
Yeah, I saw that.
skin. They're hiding
I
the
saw that.
red irritated skin. They're
Mhm.
putting mascara on them. They're dolling them
Mhm.
all up. The filters, the editing. There is a shit ton of that going on right now. So Instagram's like la la land. It's like, but unfortunately, Michelle will get. I hear young artists all the time. They're comparing their own work to that, and I'm like, but
Mhm.
that's not real. Nothing's real on Instagram.
Mhm.
Even like our day-to-day personal shit. We only post the happy shit. We only post the shit.
It's a highlight reel.
It's a highlight reel, the highlights of your life, right? We don't post like the days we're depressed and feeling shitty or mad or grumpy or, you know, that, I have a
Not
whole
on my
lot more to
business page
post.
anyway.
I'd
Not
have
on
a
my
whole,
business page, Teryn.
yeah, I'd have a whole lot more content, man, if I was posting that. That's, the real moments and days, the real stuff, but that's just not reality. The reality is, that myself included, I was a little running late to get to the Zoom. I had about 20 minutes to woof down a yogurt before I sat down with you because I had an eyebrow client. Linda Saldana, she's been with me 18 years and she's 76 years old and sun damaged skin and, texture and all that stuff. And, so you can't do single needle, whip shading on a client like that. You're not going to use organics on a client like that. Got to have a good stretch, but that's the majority of our clients. The older gals with sun damage, ruddiness, pink, oily, bleeding, non-perfect skin, super flawed skin. That is the majority of our clients. That's the reality. And we have to know how to work on skin like that, all those different skin types like that. And
I agree.
And I wish more people were posting, those type of clients on Instagram. I still seem to see those kind of clients like on my Facebook group, the Girlz Ink board and more Facebook, but on Instagram, you hardly see clients like that. I mean, everything's, fixed and filtered and young and, that whole kind of look. But I guess that's Instagram. I mean,
well, I understand the concept and why it's done and all of that, but it's not something that is showing us to the clients that are going to make up the majority of people that are going to hire us. So it's like, I can also say that figuring out like which demographic is mostly using Instagram versus which demographic is mostly finding you on Facebook or on Google, that I don't post different photos on different places, but I do choose like different photos for when I'm doing my paid advertisements, depending on which platform I'm doing. So that's a little bit different, but I totally agree that you do tend to see on Instagram mostly the young, the like the unicorn kind of client where you're like, this is going to be amazing and look amazing. And you're going to come back and it's going to be perfectly healed.
Yeah.
Like you do see that on Instagram a lot. Yeah. And on TikTok. Are you on TikTok, Teryn?
Yeah. We've got about 35,000 followers on TikTok. Yeah. We're on
That's
TikTok.
Amazing.
Yeah. We're on TikTok.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know. We do TikTok. We do like, tattoo reel thing. We try to do some funny stuff. I don't know. Our whole thing is like, is the industry going to end up on TikTok? Years ago, you think so? Because it's not really prevalent yet on TikTok.
No, but we all said that about Instagram.
Well, that's what I was just telling. Was I just telling you guys that? I was just having this conversation.
Like, well, what do we need this for? I got photos here. What do we need that for?
Yeah. I was just like saying that to like Willow and Olivia. I'm like, man, I don't want to like not do TikTok because, years ago I was like, Instagram's not going to be a thing. I'm just focusing on Facebook. And then look at Instagram blew up, and then I had to play catch up because everybody else had 50, 60,000 followers and I had like 14.
But that's how all business is. All business and all marketing is always going to ebb and flow with everything. Like it just always is. And if you don't want to keep up with it, you just don't want to be in business, and that's fine. But this is a business. It's not a hobby.
You definitely got to keep up. I think the one thing about TikTok though, that makes it a little bit more difficult is it's a lot of kids. It is a lot of kids, man. A lot of kids. And they say a lot of shit. I mean, I get called an emo. That's exciting. I come into work and I'm like, I'm Willow, because Willow and Olivia, they're young, right? And so I'm like, okay, you guys, I don't know. Someone called me an emo last night on TikTok, and I don't know what's a fucking emo. Just give it to me. What's an emo?
But you have the people, you have the resources to guide you through it.
Yeah,
but to the young ones.
Yeah, and emo ended up not being that bad of a thing, right? It was just like a certain style. Yeah, it's like the gothic kind of, right? little gothic kind of style with dark hair that kind of in the
Like
face.
punk. It's kind of like punk goth, like My Chemical Romance.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah. So a couple times they call me an emo. A couple times they'll ask me, "Are you a boy? Are you a girl?" But it doesn't piss me off, or anything like that. I can definitely make fun of myself and laugh at myself. I don't take myself too seriously. I've been gay for, my whole life and out and open about it. And so, you just got to take yourself with a grain of salt and find humor in things, because if you don't, your life sure can get you down. You know what I'm saying? So.
Oh yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, I feel you.
Well, man, we really went off.
Yeah. I gotta wrap this up. Usually, I like to sign off with like one of my like a saying, like a quote, like something positive or a really good quote. So I know I'm like catching you off guard here, but do you want to close us? Give our listeners like maybe one of your favorite quotes, a saying that like has stuck with you for the years, or just something. It's
a great question. I'm
asking you because I don't have one ready.
I know you're really putting me on the spot. I want to say that it's a Mark Twain quote.
Okay.
And I don't know the exact wording for it, but it helps me keep things in perspective. It's something along the lines of, who's the bigger fool, the fool or the person arguing with the fool?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not going to argue with people who are going to continue to lead me down that path. I'm going to trust my gut on a lot of these things.
But that's a good saying. I think you worded it pretty well. Yeah. Who's the bigger fool, the fool or the one that argues with the fool? Yeah. I think that's worded pretty right on the money. But that's good. And you get nowhere, right? And you know what I find, Michelle, when you stop arguing with the fools, like your life just gets so much more joyful and peaceful.
Very true. Very true. You're not going to convince anybody over
That's
over
right.
the internet.
And who are you really arguing with? People you could really give a shit about anyway. So it's like, why bother? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I know. So hey, this was awesome. I didn't really know how today was going to go. We had never really talked. I was like, we're just going to kind of wing it. She sent me a little bullet point. I'm just going to run with it.
No, but do you remember our the first interaction we had at your powder brows class like 3 or 4 years ago when you made fun of me?
Oh God!
Do you remember,
Did
Teryn?
I make fun of you? I know you were in my powder brow class, but I didn't know I made fun of you. I made fun of you.
Just a little bit, because remember?
Oh, was it the Adam X?
That was me.
Oh God damn it! That was you. Well, of course I'm going to make fun of you.
You're going to make fun of me.
Of course I'm going to make fun of you. Oh, let me just tell. Okay, we're running a little over. I got to tell the story. So you're in my powder brow class, right? And I walk over. Was Mary in that class? No.
Yeah.
It was a Shades and Strokes class with Mary Richardson, right? I walk over, and your machine's running. And you're running your machine. It's turning off and off, and I don't see your power box anywhere. And I'm like, well, where's your power source? How the hell you're turning your machine on and off? You're like down there. And I looked down, and you had your Adam X on the goddamn floor, right? And you were hitting the top of the button with your foot. I'm like, oh hell, stop. Hold up, stop, wait a minute.
I was using my foot to turn the dial, because I was like, well, it's a foot pedal. And then I was like, it's a foot pedal, Teryn.
I'm like, it is not a foot pedal, Michelle.
It's not a foot pedal, guys.
I have never seen this in my 20 years. I've never seen anybody use the Adam X, put it on the floor, and use their foot. It was hey,
I worked in a tattoo studio, and nobody told me any different.
That's just crazy.
And nobody told me.
And I think I make you get it up off the floor. I'm like, you need to stop that right now. It's like
nobody said anything. And then when I went back, so I took the class with you, and then I went back and I told my boss, and she was like, you've been doing what? And I was like, you weren't paying attention to me working?
And I noticed right away. Yeah, I know. Yeah. But hey, the good news is, Michelle, if you ever lost use of your hands, something like that, I mean, you're the one. I would put money on you. you would be able to like tattoo with one foot and run that foot pedal with the other foot. Yeah.
Find a way, Teryn. Versatility.
Yeah, versatility. That would be you. You could do that because you worked that Atomex with that big toe like nothing I'd ever seen before.
I was wearing shoes. Don't listen to her. Oh, no. You made me sound like I was like in the woods or something. I was not. I was just doing what I thought. The internet was not as like profuse with knowledge.
See why you needed a class with me? The universe brought you to me for a reason, Michelle. If nothing else, just to get your goddamn foot off the Atomex.
I didn't need anybody else to make fun of me except for Teryn.
I know. Well, if anyone's going to make fun of you, me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Me.
That's fun.
Because I do like to make fun of people and poke fun, and but with a lot of love and kindness.
Exactly.
Yeah. So hey, girl, thanks for today. I had a blast. I think our listeners are going to really, really enjoy this episode, and I would love to have you back on because today we talked like iron oxides, organics, all about brows. So maybe we could do another couple of segments throughout the year, and maybe our next one could be organics and iron oxides on eyeliner. We could do some lips.
Yeah, I just started using Will Anthony's because Kara taught me how to use it.
All right.
I was like, oh.
So maybe, all right, so hold your thoughts, and then maybe that can be our next podcast. We can talk about, because there's a lot of to talk about when it comes to eyeliners with iron oxides and organics as well. So I'd love to have that conversation with you.
That sounds great. I love it.
All
I'm
right.
looking forward to it.
All right. So, hey, you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. And stay right there. I'm going to say goodbye to my audience. All right. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. That was Michelle Heffner out of Maryland. And she gave you our quote. So I'm going to leave you with that. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next time on A Tatter-a-fact.